the meeting. I'm going to want to ask that, during the presentation, Matt, up to you if you want to field questions in line or at the end, but probably a good idea to kind of mute your audio and video while the presenter is up. First up on and again, our docket for today is fantastic. We've got Chris Moyer doing a tech news roundup. Closing out the meeting, we've got Teresa Makwa doing a presentation that she did for our friends over at the Pittsburgh group that I've heard nothing but fantastic about. But to kick us off, Mr. long known, multiple FileMaker DevCon presenter, platinum, former platinum, just a good egg and a smart cat, and he's got a brand new approach to training, and then he's going to tease us with some with his little search tool that he's shown us in the past that's got some improvements to it. But in essence, I want to turn this thing over to Mr. Matt Navarre, and I'm going to make you co-host, Matt, and you can go ahead and take the floor.
All right. I can't tell you how happy I am to see all these people that I know and miss. Some I haven't seen in a really long time, and some don't have their video on, and I wish they did.
We're here every month. You're welcome to join.
Let's see. I kind of doubt I'm going to have an hour of content, but I might just dive right into the super boring slide part. Talking about training. That's going to be, I think, fairly short. That screen, this program, that button. Oh, and you said turn video off, right? Well, it's on. I'll leave it on. All right, see the first slide?
Got it.
Okay. What I've learned about teaching with Zoom. That's me with a suit. Like Dave said, been around for a really long time. Started Pre-One Software in 1999 and sold it, and then I started AppWorks and sold it a couple years ago. And then thought I would semi-retire. So the last several years, I've been an adult learner. I've been in grad school working on a degree in conducting, just because I love music. And I thought, why wait? It's something I really love. And I've learned a lot about teaching during that, which really changed my approach to teaching, which I've been doing for 30 years. So a couple of big things I've learned is conducting is really all about preparation. That's almost everything you do is study the score. And then you're teaching, you're leading people to the answer, and you're making sure that everyone who does something, sings a wrong note, gives a wrong answer, that you find something right about what they did. You say something positive, and then you figure out a way to correct it subtly, and you move on. It's a completely important technique that I've learned that my mentor really was amazing at. Another thing I've learned that I really love to do is I ask difficult questions that people should have no right to know the answer to, just to get them to think as a teaching technique. Here. So as we talked about earlier, in July, I moved from the US, from Portland, Oregon to Crete in Greece. And I cannot tell you how beautiful this place is. Living on top of a hill in a rented house and looking out at the Mediterranean. It's pretty amazing. And there's snow on the mountains even. So here's one thing that I believe strongly, and I think is kind of the focal point of why training is important, no matter what kind of training. And that is every single time I've seen someone in an organization take on FileMaker and get really good at it, that becomes a better FileMaker customer. They buy more licenses, they're happier, they use FileMaker in more departments. There's basically no downside that I've seen. So why do we learn change? To do something different, and some other reasons at the bottom. Okay, even got some Greek in here, look at that. Pedagogy, paideia, Greek, child, is literally being a leader of children. And then in 1964, this dude named Malcolm Knowles came up with this term andragogy, which is teaching adults. So same basic ideas, except there's some different concepts, right? To teach adults, they get to decide what they want to learn, unlike children in school. Adults have way more experience. And when they learn something, it has to be immediately useful. Whereas a kid can learn something, sorry, that they don't need for a really long time, right? Also, when you learn as an adult, you can really immediately put it to use, and then extremely importantly, share it. This is a big reason why I think Zoom is important with learning. It's been shown that when you have control of your environment, of your time, that you learn more effectively. And being in the office, compared to being at home, you have more control, typically. Sometimes it's much less. Back in the day, when I've taught a lot of classes, it was kind of like a lecture, right? It was the presenter behind a podium, presenting to a projector in a room with, awful lighting. Students couldn't work together because they were at their own computer. No student could ever share their screen with the class. And so people could just check out. They could sit in the back and do whatever they want. And the focus was really about knowledge. They were using the computer, they were trying to follow along, but it wasn't really focused about that. That's shown to have extremely low retention rate. And so here's how I've been doing it the last couple of years. I actually been teaching really intensively the couple of years before COVID, but I started evolving this other way, teaching a class about every 2 weeks since the beginning of the pandemic. So every student is required to share their screen, taking turns, which requires engagement. You can't not pay attention if you're going to be called on to show where you are in the exercise everybody's doing. Pardon? I'll take comments, by the way, while I'm going, if anyone would contradict me. Also, it sets the pace. If you've got, I try to pick the student who's like least good at whatever thing, and they set the pace. So no one gets left behind, which is really easy to do when you're standing in front of a podium. And I put the file on a shared server. So either we all work on one file together, or everybody works on their own separate file, which I have access to. So I can kind of see between the classes, like how things are going. Oh, and then the last point, skills. It's about skills. This shows 75% retention rate, especially if you can get the students to teach each other things. Active learning is the name of the game. Okay. Another thing that I think is important that opens up with teaching classes this way is there's a bunch of people that we've never really been able to reach in the development community. And neurodivergent people are, I think, a big part of it. There's so many people who, like me, well, I've been able to get past some of my issues, but there's a lot of people who, because of their issue, haven't really been able to work at an office, but they really want to, and they really have amazing things to contribute. And this really extends that ability, right? They can learn at home, they can work at home. I guess that's really not so much about learning, but really people that we can reach out to for jobs. Similarly, diversity, equity, inclusion, right? Here I am, an old white man, and I know that's what this was like for so much of the history of this, and I'm really glad to be part of making that change, working with groups that give scholarships to women and to anyone really on this list, to get them into the community and train them, be inclusive. You celebrate that. I celebrate everything. Actually, one of the only things I don't like about living in Greece is it's pretty monocultural. I think almost every country is pretty monocultural, but living in LA and then in Oregon, it was much more colorful and lovely, especially California. Wow. Okay. Why now? Why am I doing this now? This is my one thing, training. Training, I think I realized as I got older, it's the one thing that I've really loved to do, more than development, certainly more than run a company. I don't think I really love that. Yeah. And this is the community. You're the people I care about, partners. And I really enjoy it, obviously. you can't fake enthusiasm, I don't think. So why am I doing this? Oh, squirrel. I have ADHD. And I think I've learned a lot more about it in the last few years. My flavor of ADHD is I have to have input all the time. If I wake up in the middle of the night, I got to have a podcast. It feels really weird to me to stop and shut off my brain. I just kind of can't. And to do work that doesn't thrill me, like bookkeeping, there's no way my brain simply will not do it. And this is the way ADHD brains work. I didn't realize how different my brain was to so many people that I talked to until you ask them questions like, can you actually sit still for 10 minutes and not have some input? It's, it's there. So, and then there's other flavors of ADHD that do it differently. So as I learned about myself, I've really taken a look at the things that thrill me. Composing music thrills me. Like when I'm in the Dorigo software, writing classical music, working on a choral piece or a symphonic piece or whatever, hours go by and I just don't even notice. Same thing when I'm teaching a class. I'm just completely engaged. And in those situations, I don't have ADHD. It's just not the thing. I just feel engaged compared to a lot of other activities that just don't really do that. I said structure, yes, structure life differently. So what did I do? I started a company after being semi-retired for about 5 minutes. I realized that I still had other stuff that I wanted to do. And I had a whole bunch of things I was considering. And the one that I picked was to start Claris.training. So I registered that domain. And it's really about classes, joy. And there's actually a third series is just starting. 2 series of classes that I offer. One of them is for career developers. These actually can also be people within client organizations, but mainly this is for new hires of Claris partners. And it's a 3-month class. We meet once a week all together, and I assign homework and tests. We take a look at the homework together that everyone does. There's personalized attention for everyone in the group. And it's for people who really are serious. The current group, we just started a class last week. I'll be teaching this class 3 times a year to a group of people. And my goal is to have 10 people in each group. So the group of people that I have right now are actually all, none of them are employees of partners, which is what the last group was mainly composed of. I thought that was really interesting, is people at organizations who want careers in FileMaker or just want to be way better at using it in their organization. So the goal is in 100 or so hours of work. It's not, this is not a full-time, 8-hour-a-day thing for these people. It's like a day a week or so for the 3 months, so that they could actually still do their job. And it's to make them into well-rounded developers. They're not going to be expert, of course, and probably not going to be able to pass the certification test, but they're going to be well on the way to do that. And they're going to learn best practices. So the biggest reason I realized to do this is because for any partner company to train new developers, it's extremely expensive. You have to take your highest billed, typically developer who's got the most experience, out of billable time to teach. And that developer probably A, does not like to teach, and B, probably isn't as good at it. And C, for sure, does not have the up-to-date, up-to-the-minute curriculum. So for these reasons, I think I can actually do this more economically and offer a really great service to the community, right? I'm really trying to help all the partners be better. That's my goal. Okay, the second class series is sold only through partners. So the first one can be sold through partners, or it can be sold directly, basically anybody who comes to me. So this one is, it's a set of 4 classes. Each of them is 6 hours, and they're focused on kind of related skill groups. So, and And then people can take one class at a time. So each class is 6 hours. And it used to be called like beginning, intermediate, advanced, but those don't really mean anything. So instead I have like descriptions that help people self-select. So my hope here is that anyone who wants to offer these classes on their website can sell them. When someone signs up from your website, they buy it from your web store, you send me an email and I take over. When they show up for class, I send you an invoice and you collect the margin. So again, to serve the community. So yeah, again, so for example, in this class, we would have a segment. I forgot to mention that. One of the things I do is I broke the entire training series of all the classes that I do into 1-hour segments. So I organized all the content into an hour. Why? Because a human adult can concentrate for about 40 minutes and you have really good retention and focus at the beginning of that 40 minutes and at the end of the 40 minutes. And the middle, not so much. And so we take a break after each segment. And then I also structure the class so that I have 3-hour classes, and the middle one is always more visual and a little bit less intensive. And we start right off in the beginning with the really hard stuff. And then we finish on something kind of joyful and good. Put a lot of science and thought into what I teach in what order. That part of it has been really fun. And yeah, and then the other reason I really did this is because who knows if it will really happen, but if and when Claris becomes available for free, when people can get a basically unrestricted version, I think a lot of these embers out in the world who used FileMaker a long time ago, and they still are using it, that ember is still just barely going. I think there's thousands of these people that use it in their organization, and slowly they've just kind of shrunk down to using it for themselves or 2 or 3 other people. And they're using a really old version of FileMaker. They're now going to go, oh, hey, I can be totally up to the minute and get the new version. They may or may not care about Claris Studio, but they're going to be able to use FileMaker, Claris Pro, and get completely modern. And then they'll be able to say, hey, look, this is a current tool, the current version, it runs on the current OS, and they can show their company. And I really think a lot of those are going to convert. And I think then hopefully a lot of other things in the community will be good for us, right? I don't know. I'm an optimist. I know some people don't agree with me. This was for laughter. I guess everybody's on mute. I've never really understood what this meant, but because she's a trainer, I threw the slide in. This was way less long presentation than maybe the time was allotted. So questions and thank you. Ευχαριστώ πολύ. There's my email, matt@claris.training. I'll go out of that and turn video on.
And Matt, I've got a couple of just kind of some interview questions I want to kind of ping you with after you do your final presentation, just to kind of round things out a bit.
Any questions on the training stuff? Input? Obvious plot holes?
Yes, so Matt, I'm in San Diego and I've been a FileMaker developer since '88. And there's a lot of transitions happening at FileMaker. And so one of the things I have a problem, this training you're talking about is amazing. And I hope you can reach some younger people because we will all be dead soon. And there's some confusion also with the licensing, with like pricing, and there's a lot more pieces. And I know that things are getting integrated, but I don't know what the future brings. So are you going to be talking about like where do people fit, like in terms of this new vision of FileMaker or Claris? Sorry, I have to remember to use Claris because
no one here cares.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying is that they've made a lot of decisions over the years, and we kind of gone with the flow, and now it looks like there's really big changes. So where do we kind of fit in the scheme?
Yeah, that's to be determined, right? I'm really happy to say that the first series of the class, all the students were young. I mean, they weren't, in their 50s, they were in their 20s, maybe young 30s, something like that. And that's young for us, for this industry. The current crop's a little bit different mix, but I'm definitely really wanting to reach out to the younger people. I don't know if I fully get like, where does this all fit, but I think I'm kind of trying to make something here to create something that there is no solution for this. Right. There's no one who does in-person live training, as far as I know, that sells it to other partners. It's been done in the past. Molly Connolly did it with the boot camp. But yeah, that's what I want to do. Is there anybody else doing it that I don't know about? Obviously, we've got the JavaScript classes. Those are amazing. I found him. Yeah. Oh, Petrowski, he doesn't.
He's doing like a boot camp thing. Does a small class. I think one of the guys in our group has taken it.
Okay. You'd think my podcast co-host would tell me more about that, but he doesn't tell me about it. So I'll talk to him more about it.
Well, he hasn't done one in a while, and he hasn't offered a new one yet. So that maybe he's not doing it. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, he's in a position like me, not associated with any partner, and so therefore not going to compete for any business. I don't want to do consulting. I just want to do training. I'll do consulting. I still love it. I do it to keep the axe sharp, but I don't want to make my living coding. I think training is more of my highest, best use of my time, and maybe swimming in the Mediterranean.
What about music? What about music? Are you still doing that? Are you training in music still?
Oh yeah, and music. I have to admit that I've kind of really fully thrown myself into the training business, and I was composing music for like an hour or so every day, and I haven't been for the last few weeks. But yes, I definitely really want to keep singing, either join or start a choir here, and maybe when things settle down, like find a grad program for a PhD or master's in Greece or somewhere I can attend remotely. Yeah, composing, like I said earlier, fits the same like, I don't know, cog in my brain that training does. It's just super fun.
Well, thank you for what you're doing, Matt, and I think it's the right direction. We obviously will support you in any way, and I've been contemplating going back to Greece. Got a place on the island of Patmos, and but the bureaucracy in Greece is kind of like what's the term to use? It stops you in your tracks. So when you're so used to doing things in the States, and you go back and, oh, it'll take 2 months for you to move your telephone number. Okay, thank you. So
yeah,
I'm glad
you're talking about the bureaucracy, graphiokratia.
Yeah.
But
every single thing.
We're taking a lot of steps on making that better. We are doing a lot of stuff online now. So yeah, we're just running to get on top of things.
What about the digital ID? Is that actually going to happen?
It was about to happen just before COVID, and then the whole project froze. From what I've read is they're basically copying the Estonian. Estonia did a great digital ID, but at the moment it's just, actually it's funny because every time if you travel with our ID, the ID doesn't have an expiration date. So every time you travel with that, people from foreign countries say, where's the expiration date? And we say, there isn't an expiration date. It's always funny. So yeah, but it's nice.
Yeah, I don't think it fits the Greek people and digital ID. It doesn't seem to, it's like water and oil. So
yeah, I haven't done a single thing online since I've been here. I've been to the CAP office, the office where you go in and you get a document stamped by someone's official that basically says you did it. I don't know, 15 times for various things. And I got to go again tomorrow to buy a car. Yeah, they say Greece is 10 years behind and Crete is 20 years behind, and it kind of feels like that. But I have a Starlink satellite. I can be anywhere in Greece and have good internet. That cuts out for about 5 seconds every 20 minutes, but otherwise it's pretty good.
Matt, you don't know this yet. I was actually on a Zoom call with Marshall Michaels from Mainspring, and the topic came up of Matt and his training program. He had nothing but high accolades to say. He said, "Oh my God, this program has been fantastic for us." So I just wanted you to hear a little bit of that and share it with the group here. How did you, by the way, just a quick question to you. How did you enter the world of FileMaker? What was the path that you took that got you into our midst here?
Wow. So I started in around 1985. When actually I started in the world of databases in 1983 when I graduated high school. And then I got a job very shortly after that at Egghead Software. I don't know if you guys, the old people might remember. It was a store you could actually go into and buy software. And they closed at 9 o'clock at night and no one came in past 7. And every piece of software in the store was shrink wrapped, and we had a shrink wrap machine in the back. You could open and use whatever you wanted, learn it, and play with it for 2 hours, and re-shrink wrap it and put it on the shelf, and no one knew. So I got really good at Omnis, Fourth Dimension, and FileMaker, the only 3 databases existed at the time. And I don't know, DBase a little bit, Excel. Basically, I looked at one day I looked at all the business software in the store. And I said, I've played with all of this stuff. What am I still doing here? And FileMaker was the one that I really gravitated to. And in every job I had since then, it's been part of it. Building something. I'm going to go to Costco.
What one of the questions I always like asking the veterans are, what's your favorite FileMaker feature of all time? What's the thing you go, what a genius thing that they did there?
Gosh.
Conditional formatting.
I don't use that one all that much. I think the let function, maybe conditional visibility, I really like. Button bars, actually button bars. That's my favorite tool of all time.
Nice.
Button bar is a layout calculation widget. You do not need calculated fields anymore for most things. The button bar is your solution. I teach that in my class a lot.
Maybe we're going to have to tap you on the shoulder for some examples of this in the future.
I think it's coming up in the next little part, maybe a little bit.
Actually, by the way, another question I always like to ask, obviously you alluded to your earlier days and how you kind of dabbled DBase and Omnis and so on and so forth. Other products right now that you find yourself using, whether programming or database, or no, I use this really great little widget for this or that. Other products or things that you like to use?
Wow. Dorico, if you're going to write music, is an amazing scoring program. It is joyful software, like FileMaker is. Looking at my deck of programs that I use, not of other ones that I really love. There's actually a really cool AI plugin for Zoom called Read. And if you have, when you run Zoom meetings, it'll make a transcript of every word in every meeting, and then gives you a score of how people were attentive, who was talking, who wasn't. That's really useful when teaching classes. I've only just started it, but I think it's pretty cool.
I would imagine that would allow you to see sort of the wallflowers in the corner who are not maybe feeling left out or not engaging as much as you'd like to see.
Yep, that you might not notice. It also tells you how much you talk, so you can kind of gauge, like as a teacher, I kind of need to be talking, but yeah, it gives me some metrics of what's going on.
Have you played around? Obviously, there's a wave of interest right now with ChatGPT and some of the other AI stuff that's coming into play. You mentioned that with Zoom. Any other dabblings that you've seen there or interests that you see using that?
I've been talking to Chris a lot about the use of the different AI stuff, and I think it's going to be huge. I haven't really played with it. I actually don't have ChatGPT account because I didn't have the chat previous version account, and I'm still in the queue waiting for it. So I don't know if there's any other way to get it, but yeah, I don't know. I try to spend a lot of my time enjoying Crete rather than learning new tech. I guess I confess.
Got it.
But I've also been spending a ton of time really just building this training, working on all my lesson plans and the online schedules. Oh, the third one I didn't talk about is the free training series. So this is a series of classes every 2 weeks, totally free, offered only through partner websites that sell my classes. So if you want to get a huge amount of leads by offering classes for free, then you can list my classes on your website. And then when we offer these in the past, 150 people sign up for each class, and then you get all those names to market to. And it's a 25-minute presentation with 20 minutes of question and answer, super focused on one thing: introduction to scripts, introduction to calculations, how to write a report with a subsummary. Very, very focused things.
Yeah, that's something that I feel, I go back to the old days of running training programs and using the FileMaker, professional foundation training series and so forth. And a lot of those, chapter by chapter, here's creating fields and here's auto enter and validation and so forth. And I think there are more sort of tactical approaches. Hey, I need to write a report, or I need to do an export, or I'd like to do a filtered value list or whatever. And I think kind of jumping right into things that are meaningful to what you need in your daily life can make them a much stronger gravitational pull for getting people interested in something.
Matt,
Yeah.
Is there an archive of past free lessons, or are those just ephemeral? Miss it, you're out.
We've only done a few of the free ones. I think I actually did record it, but I don't know exactly where they are. I have a YouTube channel with a bunch of stuff like that. I also record all of the classes I've taught, so there's hundreds of hours of video, but I only release it to the people who are the students in the class. So those are private on YouTube. And there's maybe even more hundreds of hours of me learning how to conduct choirs and small orchestral groups too, but those are really bad. Anyway.
Matt, what's, you've been up on stage, you've done presentations before. I'm just kind of curious, what's sort of your favorite presentation that you've ever given over the years that you seem to really get a boost out of?
Wow. Like one that I've given, I have to think about that. Man, I think I probably spoke a lot more often, more than 5 years ago at DevCon. Yeah, nothing really jumps out on all the different things that I talked about, because I try to like mix it up and talk about different things.
Right.
Talking about search, search results is a program I wrote a long time ago. This is leading into what we're doing. So the last little part, I was pandering. I was definitely talking about a commercial thing. Search results, which I'm going to show now, is free. So no commercial message there. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, search is something I totally love to do, and training. These are, I guess, like if you ask an orchestral conductor what his favorite piece of music in the world is, it's the piece he's conducting that day.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly true. I have one more question, and then we're probably at a good point for you to pivot into search results.
All right.
In terms of obviously, you've seen some of what's going on with Claris and some of the new offerings in the platform and so forth. What are you the most excited about on things that you've seen that are coming down the pike?
I think it's really that blowing a little bit of oxygen on all the embers. I think that's the thing that I'm most excited about. I don't know how direct I can be, but at the moment, I don't think you can buy Claris Pro. It doesn't seem like it's available anywhere on the Claris website. I use it every day. I've got a bunch of databases live in it. I have some Claris Studio things that are live. At the moment, there's 3 products: Claris Pro, Claris Studio, and Claris Connect. Claris Connect does not connect to either Claris Studio or Claris Pro. So this is kind of a mystery. I mean, that's like glaring to me. And of course they're going to fix it. It's a very high priority, but yeah. And then the other thing I say that I'm excited about is the speed with which we're seeing new features in Claris Studio. It does almost nothing now, but it's changing so much faster than I've ever seen FileMaker change.
Yeah, I think
that,
I think a lot. It was funny. I think back, 8, 9, 10 months ago when they were bringing out the very first beta of it, and it was very stripped down and not a lot of features. And in all honesty, I think a bit uninspiring to go, wow, this is where we're at. It did do a level set in terms of, wow, from here to a number of weeks later, they've got that in place already. And if you have been keeping up, the amount of features and the other thing that I got to tip my hat, at least on the studio front, is they're using much more modern design surface tools, things that are much more approachable. Yeah. FileMaker, I think we all grew up with FileMaker being, quote, easy to use, and we were comparing it to the blue screens and the Access and Oracle. And then in the waning years of the last 5 or 10 years, we've seen a lot of online products that are actually easier to use than FileMaker. And I think that Studio has the people that are designing Studio have learned from that, and we're seeing some really elegant composition tools inside of Studio comparatively to what we have currently in the FileMaker land.
Yeah, and I think because it's in the world of web, like when they added, I can't remember the exact name of the markup language that they use, but you can just Google and find all the keyboard shortcuts and they all just work. Boom, all of a sudden they have all these things you can do and all of the text and all of the layout. And there's so many things like that that are going to have really big effect on it that never could happen in FileMaker. And now they can happen here because it's such a bigger world that they're part of.
Right.
And Mongo was a brilliant choice too.
Yeah, great back end. So I think we're probably at a good point. I don't know if you want to give us the tour of FM Search.
Yeah. So the last part was all slides, and the next part is 0 slides and all demo. So here it is. This version is actually about less features and fully JSON under the hood and way more speed. So this server is in Germany, and I'm in Greece. That's about 1,100 miles. It's the closest AWS data center, or the second closest one. So basically the idea here is you can get results on one screen from multiple different tables. Oh, you know what? I think everything's turned off right now. So you can configure it and change all your settings through this screen here. And so you can turn on all the tables that you want to search and give them other names. Turn it on for search, choose how many lines you want to show, and then turn on all this other features on this screen. So this is button bars. These are all button bars. And then go from table to table, right? And then save your changes and you do a search again. And now it does the search. So let me turn on a couple of more tables. Settings, I'll turn on people, phone, and invoice. Save that. And I'm gonna search for strat because it's in all the places. Now that is taking a little bit because this is the first search that I've done, and it's having to cache all this data. But now that it's local, any search that I do is going to be super fast. One of the principles of search results is it doesn't search on any field that's through a relationship or that's not indexed. FileMaker is incredibly fast at searching on index fields in your table. Even if you've got 1 billion records in the table, and I've got a 1 billion record database that I've done searches in, it's incredibly fast at that one thing, especially if there's a small set of records. If you search on 1 billion record table and 900 million of them come up, it's going to take a long time. So it's all leveraged to take advantage of that. Okay, then there's features you can turn on for more powerful things. So let me I'll turn off some of these ones. And in the person table, there's a couple of features here. One of them called name substitution. That's pretty cool. And if I turn this one on and I do a search for something like Robert Smith, it's going to show me, oh, did I save that? Maybe it's Bob Smith. I'm trying to remember my sample data set. So I've got a Bob Smith and I've got a Robert Smith, but I don't think my name substitution is working correctly. Oh, it's off. So that's how it would work without it. And this is how it works with it. So it first does a regular search, but then it uses a huge list of names. Robert equals Bob, Ike equals whatever, I don't know, Mike and Michael. So some of them are easy, Matt and Matthew, Dave and David, because they start with the same thing. But a lot of them are not, because they are unrelated, like Robert and Bob. And so it has a list of a lot of them, and it's editable. So if you have names of a different nationality, you can go into the list and play with it. Let's see.
And Matt, that name substitution that's parked inside the data of the system.
Yes,
Got it.
it is. Yeah, it's the code is in a script, and then it creates a big JSON blob, and you can edit it. Previous versions of this used a ton of global variables, and a lot of people who had it hated that. So I replumbed the whole thing. So it's kind of largely the same. I'll make this very strong statement. None of you have systems, I would bet, that can show results from multiple tables in one search. It's just not a feature of FileMaker, and it's pretty hard to wire up. So adding something in that you can add in a few minutes, I just think that almost every database can use this. It's so lightweight that I think it's just—
I was going to ask, is that display a virtual list, or is it some other?
Yes, this is a virtual list. So there's one field, actually it's a button bar, and it has a very simple bit of code on it. You click on it and it shows things, but it basically just grabs the data from the virtual list, which just has the serial number, the line number. And then there's a blob of JSON that has all of the results. So these are the only global variables that it uses, one of which is the name substitution list, so which is all editable. And the results look like this, results. So it just makes JSON of everything. It sets information for headers and footers and the primary key and the table of a given record, so that when you click on it, it goes to that record in that table. So simple to integrate. So let's actually do an integration. So this is a demo FileMaker database that all I did was add sample data to. And it's kind of normalized, address and phone numbers in different places in email. But weirdly, it actually has the company and the person name in the same place, which is denormalized. So here's what we can do. So the integration steps are here, here, and then configuration are these. I give them to you, but basically, I'm going to copy and paste an empty table. This one. That will create a default layout. I'm going to create some layouts in my system. This uses layouts and some object names to do its work. So I make a layout called srprefs or settings. That's the same context as this. One called table 01, which is the first table that I want to search. I'll just make this a little simpler. And then table 02, which is actually going to be the same table, but a different set of records. Okay, then there's a folder of scripts. Copy, paste, and then all the code is now in this database. Okay, there's contents of search layouts. So there's a few layouts in here that we grab data from. There's 3. The first one is the settings table. These are all those tricky button bars that are all JSON. Pretty cool. I was very proud of myself for making that work. So
Matt,
this layout is contextless. Yes.
you might want to move a bit slower because I think we're getting a tiny bit of lag from the video.
Okay.
So you're moving on sometimes before we can see exactly what you've done.
I have ADHD. I don't move slow. I'm gonna milk that. Okay, I'll slow down a bit. So that's one layout. The next layout is there's a template for the fields that I want to define. And I put this one on the table 01 and table 02 layouts. Whoops, I put this in the wrong spot. We'll get to the configuration of this in a minute. It just takes a little bit of time. Okay, I put settings in the wrong place. Settings goes on here. And then the last one is the only one that takes a little bit of work. And that's the results layout because it has 3 parts. So delete the default stuff. Is my speed okay?
You could slow down a bit more.
Okay. So I'm going to add a.
This is Dave Knight saying you might want to slow down a bit, right?
Got it. I have a
More coffee, Dave, more coffee.
title header, top nav, I should say, and then a body. That's the main part. And then actually this can probably just be a regular header, can't it? All the layouts that we put in are in form view, except this one, because this is the virtual list layout. So there is no data. All the table that I pasted in has fields that don't contain anything except the preferences blob, which I'll show you a little bit. Okay, so that is done. Oh, except for one thing. I have to make this only list view. Okay. That completes the integration part. The next thing we do is the configuration, 3 steps. So those 3, the layouts that I pasted in, these ones here, these have object names, and search results uses the object name to marry it up with a specific field behind the scenes. So you can reconfigure this as well. And so you just kind of follow the instructions. This is the primary key. And then in this table, I want to search on the company name. And I want to display the company name first, and then maybe also the city. Searching on related data is slow. Displaying related data is not, because you're only showing it for 8 records or whatever. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's it for that table. And then the next one is for the person information. By the way, I'll have videos of all this stuff on YouTube. You can follow along with the same steps. So this one's going to search on the name first and only. I could also put a date in here if I wanted to, like when the record was created. It knows the type of data that you're putting in when you start a search. So if you enter something that's clearly a phone number or an email address or a dollar amount, it knows what it is and it only searches there. So that's what this layout is for. Like if you have phone data, it only goes to the phone table. It doesn't even look anywhere else. This one's going to show the name and then the company and then maybe the job title. That's it for that part. Then there's another area here. There's one script that is called navigate to layout. And here you have to choose in your database what layout you want a user to go to if you click a record for, say, contact. So these are the only lines of code you have to change in the script. In previous versions, there was quite a bit. So you do that for list view and form view. Okay, and then that's done. Let's see. And then the last step is the settings screen. So at this point, I can close this program. I no longer need it. Everything is now contained in here in my database. So if I go to the settings screen, it's going to give me a bunch of JSON errors. But if I click on any button, it's going to initialize and create the 200 records in this table, and then set default preferences. So then I just say, this is the company. I want 10 results. This one is person. I want 5 results. That's it. Save and then search. And it works.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
So I've done it a few times. So there may be some little parts that take a little bit more work to do, but that's kind of it. So I'm going to show you one thing I'm proud of. I was really trying to find a way to not have to have stuff. Yes.
I'm sorry. In that last screen, you showed the first X number of hits, and then at the bottom there's 159 full results. How does it determine which are the first X, in this case 10?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. So it just does a native search of the table, and then these are in basically data entry order. But in the code, there's a place where you can choose to sort it a different way. These are not relevance ranked results. I would love to I don't think that's really something that FileMaker could do. But it could link to, like, some future version of this could link to some AI thing that I could really relevance rank the data in FileMaker. So you can sort it by whatever you want before displaying the top 10. And then typically in Google, if you do a search and you don't find what you want on the first page, you just change it a little bit until you get the thing you want, right? So there's so little cost to just adding another search, adding another character, that, you know, it's just nothing. By the way, this was all locally, but there's also a PSOS option, which was not possible before. And so this makes it even that much faster. That's a different database. So, oh, that's good. Oh, this is not a hosted file. So there's a bug in my code that does not realize the file's not hosted. So I'm glad to have seen that. Yeah, this file's local, but the master dev version is hosted on. Okay, here's the thing I'm proud of. And then I'll take questions and do kind of whatever you guys want to do. There's a field in here called refs that only has data in one record, and it stores the JSON to drive all of these buttons. So as I click through to the different table I'm working on, this stores the ID of the table, and then each of the tables has all the prefs data in here. And so if I turn a feature on, like turn this one on and turn name substitution and quick find and these other ones, they just get turned on right in here. So I was really happy to store a lot of data in JSON. This may be something a lot of you already do anyway, and then have all the data be tweakable and usable without any context, just by button bars. That's saved. I think this just makes it so much more configurable and usable to not have to go to any code to change things. Yeah, so you can see on, off, just changing right there. Questions?
Well, I can see that getting our hands on this and digging into your calculations and stuff is going to teach us a lot about JSON. Because I personally need examples to learn, and this looks marvelous for that.
I hope so. I'm not sure how much of it I use, but I was very happy with the time to really go through it. All of the scripts communicate. So there's a set of scripts that communicate with each other, or that down the line. So there's one that starts it, and this script grabs some JSON of all of the environment data. Like, what are the settings? What are the settings for here? Is search history turned on or not? Is tooltips on or not? And then it grabs that JSON and calls a subscript to iterate. And this one does a search. It does a perfect search, if you will, an ideal search, a regular FileMaker starts with search in the specific fields that you want. If it fails to find results, then it goes down to the name substitution search and then does that Robert Bob thing. If that fails, it goes down to the quick find. If that fails, it goes down to the name, special for area code, special for unformatted phone. And you could put a lot of other ones in here. And I have a bunch of optional code that I've had for customizations or different versions that you can surgically put into a certain spot and add more features. And then this script calls a perform find. This whole program, where is it down? This is it. This is pretty much the only perform find command in the whole thing. So everything kind of, it does this in the loop, and it does it. There is actually one other one when it goes to a related record, but for all the searching part, that's it. Oh yeah, you see extend and constrain are also built in. So you can just type those words in it.
I'm fascinated by all the
actions.
different divider nomenclatures you use, or syntax you use. You have equals and percent signs and lines and asterisks.
It's completely random. I didn't even think about it. But yeah, there's a bunch of different ones. And I try to comment it before it is fully delivered. I'll have really, really good commenting and dependencies at the top of every single script.
What about when the found set is very large, well more than your 200 records in your virtual table?
Well, so you could cut it off to the number of records you want it to show. So you wouldn't want to put like 1,000 in here. It just doesn't really make any sense, because that would be like going to page 100 on Google. So kind of the point is you would limit this to a number that's kind of reasonable. And the found set can be giant, but it's still only showing you the records that you care about. There's a customization that I put in that I really love, and that isn't like an auto shrinking. I don't really have a good name for it, but let's say you do a search and it finds too many records. Then what it does is it sets a threshold for how many records you actually really want to see. Like ideally you want to show 10. And so what it does is you pick some date field or some field of importance. For example, last contact date or last order date. And if it finds too many, it does another search and it takes some days out of that. And then it maybe gets from 160 down to like 90. And then it takes more days out of it, and then more until it gets down to the set of records that's bite size. So like if you search for something like John, you probably want to see, oh yeah, by the way, this has multiple, you can make multiple profiles. So you can actually have different users have different preferences. Anyway, I totally interrupted myself. So that other customization can shrink that set until you get to the number of records that you want, because if you search for something like John, you probably want to find the one that placed an order recently, not one that you haven't done business with in 5 years. I would submit.
I guess I was thinking more of integrating this with, I'm currently working on a reporting system. And, you know, so I need all of the invoices from last December. And that may be, you know, 5,000 invoices. So, and then I'd want to, you know, not take it to a virtual list, but take it to a sub-summary list to show the records.
Yeah, I in my opinion, there's two types of general searches people do in FileMaker. There's one where you know what you're looking for, and it's one thing, kind of like if you Google something, you kind of know what it is, and you're trying to find that one thing. And that's what this is. And then there's reporting searches where you maybe don't know, but you're trying to collect and get a set of records. I think you could push search results into that direction. You can certainly really customize what happens when you leave this global field before you start doing any search. For example, you could put something in here like invoice report last month, and then figure out a way to parse that. Actually, Vince, you're on this call. You showed me something really, really cool in Italy that you guys have that does something just like that. It uses like AI to run a report like that from from speaking into your Apple Watch in the demo that you showed me. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I think that there's basically reporting searches and Google style find one record searches.
I think I agree with you, Matt. And even, you know, if you're looking for something, if you're looking for Stephen Blackwell, enter find, type in the fields that you need, and that's going to get you exactly the person you're looking for. It's when you're saying, I don't want to spend the time to do that, or I'm looking for a guy named Stephen, I forget his last name. And that's what your system does such a brilliant job of. From a reporting standpoint, that's precise. I don't want to go something sort of in March and all the way through the end of April. You're going, no, I want it March 1st through the end of April. Yeah. That's a definitive search. So I would tend to agree with you. This is meant for more of that fuzzy. I think it's sort of like this, or kind of like this, or can you substitute Bob for Robert? I think from a reporting standpoint, you want to use very precise criteria generally.
Yeah, I think that's generally what I've built in systems, is something just like what you're saying. Can you mention how to contact or is that works? Oh yeah. So availability. This is a direct impact thing, right? They bought AppWorks and they're making this available for free. So it'll be available on their website, but also any of you who want it, you can just email me and I'll send you what I have right so far. Oh, Matt@Claris.training. Plug.
Very impressive, Matt.
I was sure I wasn't going to take the hour, and
here we are. No, this is super good, and I like the fact that we got to focus on a couple of areas of what you're working on. And kudos to you for number one for taking this as a project, a labor of love, and doing the Lord's work in terms of really going to the edges on this and pushing it as hard, and then obviously making it available to the community. That's such a true gift for all of us. So appreciate it.
Yeah, I hope so. But you're right. It was a labor of love. This is definitely one of those things that I didn't, it didn't feel like work, right? It was just so fun to unravel all the JSON stuff. And yeah.
Super fantastic. Okay, we're going to move on. Thanks again to Matt. We hope to see you again. Always welcome here, obviously. we're going to pause the recording.
Yeah. Also, a lot of artists and musicians need another source of income, right?
Yeah, they need a day job. Exactly.
Especially when they close all the studios.
I think it really speaks to, especially the early days of FileMaker, the creating in FileMaker speaks to the creatives.
Yeah, I agree.
Very much. All right, folks, back on to our regularly scheduled programming. Again, just a reminder, we're the board incredibly excited having our newest board member, Chris Moyer, join the group. He's brought some really good insights, and one of them is this next segment that we're looking at that we're, for the moment, we're dubbing it, Tech News Roundup with Chris Moyer. But Chris has put together some things, happenings, doings in the world of technology, Claris and otherwise, that should have some relevance to our world. So I'm going to turn you loose, Chris.
Okay. Let me share my screen. Let me know if you can see that.
Yep.
Got it.
Got it? And so I guess first off, I want to say I totally stole this idea from Gary Palmer at FMBug, the Brighton FileMaker user group in the UK. So I just wanted to give a little tip of the hat to those guys. Thanks for letting us steal your idea, because it was great. And, I would listen in the first couple of times I saw this, like, oh, I knew about that, and I knew about that. I was like, oh, I hadn't heard about that. And so just the thoroughness and the breadth of it made me think that, if I was picking up something every time, that this could be a generally useful thing. So I thought I'd rip off their idea and run with it. So let's get to it. And so the sort of structure of this will sort of go from broad to narrow. We'll start off with some general tech stuff and then get into Claris specific stuff and start with what's Claris up to, and then look around the ecosystem and see what else is going on there. So one of the big pieces of news, because a lot of FileMaker servers have been attacked by ransomware in the past, is that ransomware payments have fallen by a lot in 2022. And this is due to a variety of factors. The insurance companies have been taking it in the chops, doing insurance payouts for ransomware. And so they've really clamped down the requirements that they have in order for you to get cyber insurance. And so they're saying, if we're going to be covering you, then you need to have all these security measures in place. You need to have two-factor authentication, anti-phishing campaigns, and stuff like that. And so it's really improved the rigor that companies who are targets of ransomware just have as a starting state. And then the other thing is that the invasion of Ukraine happened. And so as soon as that happened, you're probably aware that all sorts of entities and oligarchs and people like that got sanctioned, and the FSB is one of the sanctioned entities. And several ransomware gangs are based in Russia. And so some of these gangs have ties to the FSB. And so by extension, they became sanctioned entities. And now all of a sudden you have the feds breathing down people's necks saying, you can't pay that ransom because you'd be paying it to a sanctioned entity. And then now all of a sudden you're in trouble. So I think in 2020, the ransomware payout, at least reported payout, was that, I'm sure the number is way higher, was 765 million. And then in 2022, it went down to 456.8 million. So big drop. So yeah, that was government pressure, better controls in the first place. Conti was one of the ransomware gangs, and now that these ransomware gangs are sort of getting put on sanctions lists, they're all sort of dissolving themselves and turning into splinter groups, and then they come up. There's been a lot more effort to obfuscate the strain of ransomware that people are using in ransomware as a service, which is still going strong as a concept. But it's just interesting the effect that the invasion of Ukraine had on ransomware worldwide and payments. And I guess a couple of gangs weren't playing by the rules, if you want to even call it that, and where they would extort a ransom, someone would pay the ransom, and then they wouldn't get the decryption keys. And so word of that got around, and as the likelihood of paying a ransom and not even getting what you paid for became a higher probability, I think the appetite between the sanctions lists and that likelihood of not even, getting your money's worth out of a ransom payment, that it plummeted. And that continues to play out. And I'm sure we'll see kind of a similar environment this year because all those sanctions are still on. Twitter has also been big in the news. Recently, they've been having outages, but with Elon Musk's ongoing efforts to try and monetize different sources of revenue or different, like the API thing here, they want to now charge developers for access to the API. So if you had any sort of business or even a service that relied on the Twitter API to sort of keep your finger in the wind and see what was going on, now that's going to cost money. And I doubt it'll be a lot of money, but it's certainly going to change the calculus for a lot of companies that have information harvesting business models. And then a lot of people have sort of looked at this Chinese claim that their researchers have found a way to break RSA encryption using quantum computers. There are quantum computers out now. I forget who makes them. They're called qubits, I believe, are some of the commercially available ones. They're like $50,000 for something that looks like a little mini tower. But they haven't released, what they did and how they did it or anything like that. So as far as I've heard, there's nothing that's been reproducible yet or provable. So a claim has been made, not much has been made of it, but the word's out. And so were that to be true, that would be an earthquake because so much of the world, certainly all of the financial transactions around the world, rely on the soundness of encryption. And if we entered a post-quantum encryption world where all of a sudden we'd have to have quantum computing proof encryption algorithms, there'd be a massive effort it would take to, upgrade web browsers and financial transactions and all sorts of mechanisms, API services, the sort of fabric of the internet would need to be in need of a major overhaul. So that would be huge if that were true. We haven't seen much proof that it is true, but it's just sort of an environmental factor that's out there right now. And then layoffs are, have been in the news, but it's not as cut and dried as, say, layoffs in the past have been. So Meta hired laid off 11,000 people, but they hired 43,000 people during the pandemic. So on net, they're not even down. They're at a net surplus since pre-pandemic. And look at freaking Amazon. They hired 748,000 people during the pandemic and then just dropped 18. So we're looking at like a 2% culling for Amazon. And there's a website called layoffs.fyi that sort of has a little scorecard of who's laid off what and what's been going on. And they list 332 tech companies laying off over just north of 100,000 people. And it sounds like, oh, this is the result of the recession or there's a pullback and stuff like that. But if you sort of look at it relative to the hiring sprees they've been on, they were all terrified with the labor constraints. It's like, we can't hire enough good people. We better overhire so we make sure we get the people we need. And sort of looked at in that context where they were sort of defensively hiring to make sure they had good staff to do stuff just in case they need, if the growth trajectory is still trending upward. Now that it's at least leveling off, I would certainly not say we're like in financial straits here. These companies made killings during the pandemic, and so they're awash in cash. And so now they're doing layoffs, which will enable them to sort of turn on the afterburners financially. They've reduced their cost profile a little bit, but there's other things you can do with cash. So there's going to be a lot of companies doing stock buybacks, especially companies that have significant holdings with the hedge funds. The drug companies have, aging stables of products. And so they're looking for stuff that's going to be still on patent and have legs into the future. And so drug companies are hoarding all this cash and they're going to be spending it on deals. So there'll probably be a lot of merger and acquisition stuff going on this year and next. But the interesting thing is that all these companies overhired during the pandemic because they were so afraid of the labor shortage. And now that they're doing all these layoffs, you have all these H-1B visa workers who, if they can't find a new job in 60 days, are going to be out of here. And what's that going to do to the labor shortage? Make it worse. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. There's a lot of sort of vectors at work here. And, a lot of companies are projecting like sort of not much growth for the first half of the year, and then they're looking for things to pick up the second half of the year. And if all those H-1B workers are gone, that should be, spur yet another labor shortage on the back half of the year. So it'll be fun times for those guys. All right, this is just some factoid I ran across, and I thought it'd be a fun survey question to ask. How many of you have ever eaten at your computer? Anybody? Show of hands. 1 or 2. Here's the fun factoid. Bon appetit.
Yeah, but it's a different kind of dirt.
What if you use a cover and clean it almost every day?
That's right. Hand
I was
washing.
going to say that's your keyboard, man, not mine.
No, I can get a whole snack out of the crumbs in mine.
I never sit on my keyboard, so it's not a problem.
All right.
There's a reason why.
At your desk, just hold that thought.
There's a reason why I clean client keyboards before I use them.
Yes, not a bad reason. So now we're going to pivot over to the Claris specific news events. So as most of you know, and we're probably on the event on January 25th, Claris did an update 2023. It was sort of a State of the Union kind of thing. It's the time of the year for it, so why not? We had Brad Freitag, Robert Holsey, Peter Nelson, and Janine Campbell were all speaking there. And it was a lot of stuff that we'd heard, like here's Studio, here's what it looks like now. There wasn't a ton of fresh information. There were no announcements made on, when the free tier of Claris was going to be out. There was nothing about Engage. There had been some talk about a Studio Kitchen that hasn't come to pass. And so I sort of left that going, I would really like to hear more about some of these plans for future events. And so it was all TBD. One good factoid was that Claris hears our plaintive cry about having to use the Claris ID, and that doesn't really work in a lot of environments that have like Active Directory and things like that. So ADFS is definitely in the works for the Claris platform. Another interesting piece of information was that Claris Studio had originally been housed on AWS, then moved to Google Compute, and is now moving back to AWS, reportedly because of difficulty getting the service up on overseas data centers. And there was also an interesting tidbit about Java, which is used in FileMaker Server and WebDirect. They upgraded the version of Java that they use, and it improved memory use and facilitated having 1,000 clients on that. So interesting stuff. I was sort of hoping for more, but that's what we got from that session. If anybody has any other things they noticed or heard or things like that, just feel free to jump in here. I'm totally comfortable with a free-for-all, so chime in if you want. This was an interesting announcement. Ann Devins is the new VP of Marketing. Claris put out a release on January 26th. I pulled up her LinkedIn profile, which you can see on the right. And they announced it in late January, but on LinkedIn, it says she's been at Apple/Claris since November. So I thought the timing of that was interesting. I don't know if they were sort of figuring out how they wanted to do things or why the delay, but she was there couple months before the announcement was made. The other thing I thought was interesting is her time at Chrometrics, which is a lot of data-driven kind of marketing activity. I think that's probably the skill that made her particularly attractive. But I also noticed that, a lot of her job titles are in product management as opposed to marketing. So it's interesting that she's made this move laterally from product management to VP of marketing. So should be interesting to see what she brings to bear.
Yeah, I think fundamental on that point, Chris, we have a vice president of marketing again, right? So that seat was empty for quite some time. So just to have some focus and drive in that position is probably really well received.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that the particular skill set she brings was different, I think, from previous incumbents. This is a recent posting on the Claris community. This is about the NFR, which for those of you who are partners now have access to 5 user not for resale licenses, so you can get Studio Pro, Claris Connect, and things like that. And sort of to this end, they sent out an email yesterday saying that there's going to be Claris Studio training sessions for people who feel like they need an introduction to the product on the 14th, 15th, 21st, 22nd. And then they're having office hours on the 16th and the 23rd. So these are kind of some partner specific things. And then Rosemary's here in the flesh, but Rosemary, I have your little bobblehead up on the screen here. This is about the Net Promoter Score survey. It's still up, so I assume you still want it broadcast to the masses. But I wasn't super familiar. I'd heard of a Net Promoter Score, but I wasn't super familiar with what it is. And so I went to the Wikipedia and said, what the heck is a Net Promoter Score? And so it's a market research metric that says, would you recommend this company, product, brand, what have you, to a friend or colleague? And they look to, you could either have a negative Net Promoter Score, which means probably not, or you could have a positive Net Promoter Score, and the scale is -100 to +100. And so that's what this survey is about. And I think this sort of fits into a larger theme that I've been seeing, where lately Claris seems to have a lot of antenna out, sort of pinging the community about what's going on. And in particular, what are the barriers to moving off the FileMaker platform onto the Claris platform? There's a ton of interest on that and what the obstacles are for that. So this is one thing that Claris wants to know. Marie Normand posted this on January 25th. And what she's looking for is people who have not messed with Claris Studio before. So if you're a newbie to Claris Studio and you want to be a guinea pig or a focus group participant, whatever you want to consider it, Marie would like a word. So this is on the Claris community as well. And then there is a Claris Connect survey, which I guess had a glitch, and I think the glitch is fixed. Rosemary, you could speak to that if you have any more information on that, but this is specifically about Claris Connector and people who have tried or deployed Claris Connect.
Actually, I know there was a glitch, and then I left for vacation for 10 days, and so don't know if it's fixed or not. But
okay, well, hopefully the glitch is fixed. And I thought there was a workaround, like if you ran into it, you could back up and then go forward or something along those lines. So yeah, if there's a secret handshake, feel free to post it in the chat. Let's see. And you guys haven't updated this since yesterday, have you, or have you?
Nope, not yet.
This is the latest and greatest. So if you get onto Studio and you get the splash screen, you can also find this in the on community. But this is sort of the latest hit list of what the Studio developers have been working on for this revision. How often do you guys release those? Are you on a timetable, or is it just whenever the devs say, okay, we got one?
It's kind of the second. I think that it's at least once a month usually, but anywhere from 2 weeks to 4 to 5 weeks, I think.
Right. So we're a little early for a fresh one now, but maybe in the next week or two.
Maybe.
So anyway, this is super helpful just to sort of see what's been getting cooked up in the kitchen. And then this is where's Engage? We want to know about Engage. And so, yeah, there's been talk about the premium version, Claris Engage US, and possibly Engage EU, Claris Studio Kitchen. Rosemary, if you have any information to share, I'd be happy to give you the floor.
I wish I did. And as I said in both of the breakouts, as of right now, I know nothing. Okay. There are very high level, Brad and Julie level discussions going on about the events strategy. And I think if you were listening in the webinar, Brad did address, either Brad or Janine did address this, that we are planning to do something, but it will probably not look like Claris Engage or FileMaker DevCon of the past.
Okay. I mean, I thought the auto enter event went very well last year, and I thought the Engage EU went well. And for you guys to just show up with marketing dollars and be sort of a primary participant, I thought worked great. And so if you guys don't want to do it anymore, my experience of how those things have worked was good. I know a lot of people are super keen on in-person event, and I want to mix and mingle and talk to the engineers and stuff like that. And I agree, but the events we had last year, I thought were great, you know, as far as they went. And so I'll take that over nothing any day of the week. So, and then there's the little purple thing. I actually stole this out of Community. So if you want to sign up for the free version of the new Claris platform, you'll see this little purple banner in the top right corner of Claris Community. So if you have not signed up for that, you might want to do that if you want to get the word as soon as that comes out. Okay, what events have been scheduled so far? So .fmp registration is open. That's in Berlin. It's an English speaking FileMaker event. It's personally my favorite FileMaker event. It's sort of akin to the advanced track. Back when we had DevCon, we had sort of beginner, intermediate, business track, advanced track. It's like the advanced track of DevCon. And so everybody's out there showing like sort of obscure, almost like fundamental research they've been doing on weird FileMaker tricks. Like the stuff that Matt just showed with his search thing would be kind of a typical presentation there. Like, look at this cool thing I found. And so it's very nuggetized bits of technique and information and things like that. And Monkey Bread is always there showing off their latest and greatest stuff. There's the FileMaker conference in Basel in June. That is, as I understand it, a German-speaking conference. Pause on Air in October. Engage U is going to be in Antwerp. I forgot to put the where it's going to be. But that'll be in November. And so all these events are on the books. And Rosemary, I don't know if you guys are planning in putting an appearance on any of these or not, but maybe, yes, no.
We're figuring it out.
I got nothing but porcupines for your lap today. All right, other announcements. And this is stuff that's generally on like some of the different Slacks or maybe on FileMaker News on Facebook. If you guys don't subscribe, maybe you want to look at that because some announcements come out there. So DataBuzz has announced they are bringing out a new FM accounting link for the QuickBooks Online edition. NRG got a FedEx compatibility community status for 2023. They also provides promo standards integration services. And I guess this is a standard widely used by the promotional materials industry. And so they're compatible with whatever data format those people use to ship information around. And then on February 6th, MBS announced a pre-release, the little PR on the 13.1 PR is a pre-release version of the next incarnation of the MBS FileMaker plugin. So those are coming. Let's see, blog content. This is a lot of stuff from the Claris engineering blog. I don't look at this, or I didn't used to have a habit of keeping a close eye on that until Gary Palmer said, oh, and here's what's going on in the engineering blog. And it's like, you know, I need to pay more attention to that because there's always something going on there. I didn't see anything super recent. I think the last posting was on January 13th. But for those of you who aren't close observers of it, I highly recommend it. There's interesting stuff there. Let's see, scripted transactions are mentioned in there. The Claris white paper on Linux server is good to know about for those of you who are sort of looking very warily at the move to Linux only FileMaker servers on the Claris server.
Can I insert just something on that? If you had downloaded it prior to this week, please download it again. We made some. It's been revved specifically around removing the requirement for Linux desktop to install Claris server and to make it possible to get all the bits from our servers down to Linux, down to your server without installing a desktop and a browser. So you can now do it all from the command line.
Yes. As I recall, Wim was not enthusiastic about the desktop. Let's see, DB Services blog, they had an article on appending PDFs on FileMaker server. So server-side PDF manipulation, always a useful thing to be able to implement. More blog stuff. WebDirect, deploying WebDirect in a DMZ. Wim had a post on December 15th. Beeswax, Vince had measuring performance within FileMaker. Poor Vince has been globetrotting around the world and having to feel what wide area networking feels like in its worst possible state. And so he got very interested on measuring how fast those bits were moving around the wires. And so he has taken it, raised it to an art form, is I guess the best way to put it. And you should check it out. There's a YouTube video on the bottom there, which is linked to an earlier FMDiSC meeting where he got into measuring transaction performance very precisely. So if you need to put a meter on your connections and sort of assess performance, gold standard right there. Other stuff. So ChatGPT, huge in the news. I think first, and it's funny, is sort of watching the gold rush of people trying to say, ooh, FileMaker ChatGPT, read my stuff. So I think support group was first out of the gate on that. They had a posting on that, and I think that's been cross-posted in the what's the Kevin Frank's blog? What's the name of it? FileMaker hack, FM hacks, FileMaker hacks. I'm drawing a blank. Sorry.
FileMaker hacks.
Thank you. No slight intended, but yes, I think that's been cross-posted there. Chris Hippolyte had a nice post in the community on the 2nd. That's just, hey, here's everything you need to know and think about. And then, of course, there's already been a backlash. Hive Moderation released a ChatGPT detector. The ChatGPT people themselves released something to help educators detect plagiarism. You know, has this, essay been written by ChatGPT? There have been some AI lawsuits. The interesting one that's sort of germane to our development community is the one against Microsoft for mining code in GitHub, saying, that's other people's work. The FileMaker community is sort of intrinsically a sharing community. We share code all the time and no strings attached or anything like that. I mean, some people have commercial products that they sell, and they obviously want to maintain the IP in that. But all this stuff out in GitHub is generally available for people to download and use, their libraries or what have you. And so the fact that Microsoft mined that to train their chat agent on that is odd. I don't think of it in the same vein as like these artist lawsuits who said, you took my artwork and now you're making stuff that looks similar to my artwork, even to the extent that it has like the Getty Images watermark still in it and stuff like that. So I think of those as fundamentally different things. The artists, I totally get, they have an absolute grievance, but people openly sharing code and having that code used to train an AI, I think is fair use, why not? But I don't know, interesting things to get into there. And that's obviously going to be all over the place this year. So it's going to be big. And that's all I got. Any comments, questions?
Yeah, nice presentation.
Yeah, Chris, I want to use the word overachiever in terms of what you just did. This is fantastic.
Cool. Well, I will stop sharing.
Can I just make a quick plug for one thing I've been doing the past few months?
Absolutely.
And that is, if you watch me or follow me in the community, about once a month, I'm doing here's some of the great stuff I saw. So my plug is, first, if you see it, read it, let me know what you think. But second, if you see great stuff, send it my way. Or if you publish something you'd like considered for inclusion. I can't be everywhere. So if you see something that's worthy of promoting more broadly, let me know.
Oh, Rosemary, you want to take over the Women in FileMaker content resources and just post everything there at the same time?
Maybe.
I'll email you separately.
Yeah.
This was great. I want to thank Chris for all the extra effort on that. It's great seeing a lot of the stuff all at once, and then we can all refer back to you. So I'm really glad he put the effort in on that. So it was really, really valuable. Okay, folks, first and foremost, I want to welcome Teresa Makwa to our group. She has not been a presenter before, and we're thrilled to have her for the first time. She's got a really amazing case study for us on basically, you know, design, FileMaker Go, and a really great story that goes along with it. So I'm going to turn the control over to her, and let's give her a nice warm welcome.
Hello, everybody. First, I want to say thank you for having me. And I said in one of the breakout rooms that, you know, normally I just do our local FMDiSC meetings, and I'm not the most outgoing social person. So this is my first time reaching out across state lines to say hello to lots of folks. So thank you once again. I am going to share my screen and get started here. All right. So first slide, who am I? So I am half of Profile Developers. We are consultants out of the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. The other half of Profile Developers is my husband, Thomas, who is clicking away 6 feet away from me. I've been developing in FileMaker since version 8.5 back in 2007. And just recently I was realizing that's 15 years, which is, I should have some wine for that. I like puzzles and dark chocolate and sci-fi. So it's a little bit about me. Next here, we have my shameless plug that we at Profile Developers have a podcast. We have 29 episodes from 2017 to 2020. We took a break. We started back up recently, and we just posted a new episode this week. And I do want to thank my husband who does all the work, and I just show up and try not to blather on too much. So my presentation today is a show and tell. And like I said, I had presented this a couple weeks ago, a month ago, at the Pittsburgh FMDiSC, and nothing much has changed with the presentation since then, if anybody happened to catch the recording previously. But this is a product called Stella. Now, Stella is a very big system that we've been working on for 5 years now, maybe 6 years. And the company, they sell and service personal emergency medication systems. So the I fall in, can't get up type systems. So they knew from the get-go, they've been using FileMaker forever. And when we took on this project, they knew that at some point they wanted to start using FileMaker Go and send out their techs with iPads to take care of their installations, service calls, things like that. So the challenges that they knew that they were facing is that they had multiple technicians assigned to multiple stops each day. They wanted to get away from their paper-based process. The process that they had was that they basically, so a tech would have maybe 10 service calls that they were assigned to for a day. And they would get a piece of paper that had the list of stops, and it had like the account number of the equipment, the customer's name, and a line for notes. And then what it was it a pickup, a service call, or an install, that type of thing. And they had that, and then a stack of contracts. So if it was an install, they had to leave a contract with somebody. And for everybody, they had a set of notes, basically like a history of anything, any communications with customers, as well as client data, name, address, phone numbers, things that need to be verified with the client. So they had this big stack of paper that they would take with them. So there was no guaranteed connection. So they needed an offline system. Some of these guys go off into the boonies to install these things. They wanted to be able to grab technicians' notes and the client data updates so that they could be added to the main system after review, so that somebody could approve everything, and they wanted to hit a button and suck it back into the main system. The last thing that they wanted to do was to be able to kind of gather these service activity records for future performance reviews. So things like, did you call the office? Yes, no. Did the customer, did you call and leave a message? Were you denied entry into the home? So things like that they could collect and then report on. So we created a blueprint for the mobile app, and we love wireframing. It's one of our favorite things to do. We've been working with this client for a long time. We understood their processes pretty well, and we use Balsamiq for feedback and for client use case review. We only did, I think, 2 versions of the blueprint because, like I said, they explained to us multiple times, and we've been working with them for so long, that we had a very good idea. And the first version they went through and just made kind of like minor changes. So we went from the blueprint to this is what the main menu looks like today. So we stayed pretty close to the original drawings. And what this chunk of the presentation is to showcase kind of the original version 2 drawings compared to the current versions. Again, the client had a very clear idea of what they wanted their technicians to have in front of them. But, you know, as we've all experienced, it looks good on paper. And then once you get it into somebody's hands, things change. And then once the techs got a hold of it, there was a whole new set of feedback. And they have a great point person on their team who was very, very accessible and really was good at kind of communicating what they needed as he was kind of debugging things and making suggestions. So the first slide here is just our main menu. So pretty standard stuff. We have, you know, a hello, buttons to open the daily tech report, and the tech report is that list of the type of service call, the time, if there is one, client name, and just kind of that order. They needed a button to call the main office. So there's a phone number that's hard-coded into the app, and it talks to, I think it's called Reach UC, is the app on the device that makes it, you know, call numbers and makes it look like it's coming from their company instead of from the cell phone or the SIM card that's attached to the device. General view notes, view inventory, close app. We are using an add-on, What's My Latency, to run latency tests. They can do this manually just to check their connection speed, but anytime the system syncs back to the parent, it runs a latency test beforehand and then determines if the connection is good enough to send the data. The logout button allows us to jump into admin mode if we need to. They haven't been using it. I was using it a lot at the beginning, but so it's mostly for us, but we could move it over to them for an admin use if necessary. And then we have our little sync button in the corner. For our daily tech report screen, we had some changes here. So pretty much the same, but we decided to add some color to help a tech kind of get more of a instant view of what their day looks like. They have some extra information here, what's wrong with the equipment. Potentially, they have their account number. This default column is the equipment model that they are looking at. And then we have these status stars over on the side. And so what these will show as they go throughout the day, if a service call is completed, the star goes from gray to gold. If it is rescheduled, it'll change to a red kind of calendar icon. And then we've added just recently a new one for refused, just in case they show up on someone's doorstep and they say, absolutely not, I didn't even want this. And then that is going to be like a little black X. We have at the bottom here our total. The LSM is calling to their monitoring center. Mapping, they can toggle between a Google map and or the Apple Maps. We used to have a button in the corner here for like showing the daily route. So they would tap that and it would just open up either Google Maps or Apple Maps with their entire day mapped out. But then, so it's one of those things where, you know, the COO said, oh, we have to have that. And then the text, they were like, we don't need that at all. You know, we only need to know where we're going next, not the entire day. So little things like that. Sub reports, we'll see those in a little bit. Those are the kind of information that they have on file for like the calls from clients. And then inventory is just to kind of browse the set of equipment that they have available. The service call detail kind of runs through the information from the system. So we got status, some of that service call information, why they're there. This is payer information and the account, the equipment. And so this is some of that sub-report information here. So they have a note that's important for text to get access to. And then the sub-report history. This is a web viewer. So if they need to, they can tap into that and scroll it because sometimes they'll have 2 years worth of note history. And it's all these, you know, called customer, left a message, called the care manager and said, blah, blah, blah. So there might be a bunch of information that they had to have access to so that they could kind of inform their text before they get to the clients. So we've got phone numbers here. If there were multiple phone numbers, they could tap the little phone and it pops up a card window with all of the related phone numbers for any responders or for the home. This location button is the one that'll tap, that they can tap, and it'll open it up in either Apple or Google Maps and start the navigation for them. We've got this button set here. This is actually built. These are like what Matt was using before. These are button bars with calculated. So this is based on JSON that is in a service checklist field. So depending on how many options are in here, and that actually gets sent down with the kind of data bundle for the service call. So in the service checklist, it determines, oh, is this a service call? Is it an install? Is it a pickup? And then the checkbox options are different depending on those. So it's the same field, but it'll show up as, you know, that this has 3 options, the other kind has 4 options. And then ticking the box will change the value of the JSON. They have a reschedule option that they can, you know, they have to just tick that it's rescheduled, pick a reason, and then they can switch it to reschedule instead of having to complete it. This tab will take us to entry photos, and they have the ability to add photos, as many photos as they want to a service call. Here's another detail of the sub report. So again, very close to what they wanted. Again, HTML in this web viewer. So this can have as much information as necessary. And then when they add a note down here, when it gets sent up with the sync, that will get appended to the activities. This is actually a list of all related activity / note records that are in the main system. This one, the kind of our tabs changed as you would expect them to from a wireframe to real life. So now we're in the appointment review section, and that has 3 or 4 kind of sections depending on what it is you're doing. If this was an install, there would be a terms section also, and so then signature would be number 4. In the appointment review, this is where they can, you know, call the main office again. They have to mark that the equipment's tested. This is a place where there's a lot of kind of checking going on. So, and that's what these little kind of alert symbols are for. So if they haven't marked off the items as done on the checklists, that'll be there. if they didn't mark the equipment tested okay, if they don't add a note, if they don't have any photos. So, and of course, as you know, I'm sure we've all run into, you know, management says, well, we want to make sure that everybody everywhere checks all the boxes and does all the stuff that they're supposed to. And then once you get into practice, they're like, you know, in so many cases, we don't, the photos aren't required. If it's an installation, they're not required. So can we work around that? So, you know, of course, we have a couple little things built in where, you know, if they don't add a note, it'll warn them and give them the option to skip it. If they don't want to add photos, we have 2 checkboxes on that tab that'll say that the client refused as an option, or photos were not necessary. So we have ways around that. For any equipment that they have on here, we can change it out. And you can have multiple pieces of equipment linked to the service call. And there's a way to reset it here. So if they decide that they've, you know, messed something up, they put the wrong piece of equipment on, or if they had to change things out 2 or 3 times, they could just reset and start over. Because in a lot of cases, they might go to somebody's house and there's the equipment they're picking up, there's equipment they have in their trunk, they might, you know, the equipment that they expect to install, and then they get there and the person has they have a landline, not a mobile line. So they have to switch out the equipment to match what the phone service is in the area. So, so this is kind of the most complicated piece here, the client data. So what they wanted was to be able to, they need to be able to edit any piece of information related to the client while they're on site. The customer service people, they will get a set of information, some information about a client. They will have their name, they will have, you know, the important information, but they won't have everything. So they need to be able to send the tech there with as much information as they have, and they get like a sheet that's part of the sub-report. It comes with their sub-report on paper, but it has name, address, medications, allergies, responder list, who their hospital is, who their doctor is, all of that stuff. Do they have a pet? Do they need oxygen? So they are going with some information, and a lot of the times it's incomplete. So they really wanted to have a way to edit everything, you know, and be able to save that and bring that back in. And so this, we'll get into a little more detail with this later, because this is an interesting layout. The last screen that I have here for the service call, or for the appointment review, is the signature. So again, basic stuff, shows the equipment, check boxes for agreeing to test, signature box, and then they have the ability to email the contract. They can pop this open and it will build a version of the contract as a PDF and toss it over to Apple Mail so that they can send that to folks. The inventory list, pretty plain Jane, simple stuff. You know, we have it sorted by the location and then the status to help them kind of figure out what they have. They asked for a button to pull stock so that they would know that they actually grabbed the stuff. So that's what that's there for. The technician list, again, another kind of plain Jane checklist. These are, well, I could get into where these all come from and what they're, because there's a set of default checklist items that are on the iPad, but depending on the equipment that is linked to all of the service calls depends on what checklist items should be linked to this particular service call. So when it builds the equipment, like the inventory records on unbundling the service call information, it then goes and finds all the related checklist items that it needs, makes a copy of those for the service call so that that's where we can, check the boxes off and on. If I rebuild this at some point, I'll probably redo that as just a JSON object. So, but right now they're separate records. So last one here, the photos, again, pretty straightforward. And the photo gallery opens up in a card window. They can take as many photos as they want. And the photos at the end of the day, when they do their end of day sync, because it's anytime they mark a service call as either completed or rescheduled, it uses the FileMaker Data API to pop that data up to the server, so that on the in Big Stella, where this is talking to, they can see their mobile service calls and see as they are as they're completed throughout the day. They can kind of see where their techs are and how they're doing. So the service call information goes up in that step, but the image information goes up at the end of the day, just because, just in case somebody goes a little click happy, didn't want anyone to get stuck moving a lot of data. But nobody's taking giant photos. We also have it by default restrained in terms of the size of the image. So how to build it? Like I said before, we had a lot of time to think about this. But as we all know, there's 1,000 ways that you can build anything with FileMaker. So we tried to do it right. So let's start with the structure. So like I said before, we've got two pieces here. So we've got Stella, which is our big database. So at the time, 89 tables, multiple files. We use the index and data file, the index and data file separate. We also have a couple of files that are for imports, exports, and other kind of utility tables. And then we wanted to create Stella Mobile. So that one has 17 tables and it's a single file. We have them noted over here. The green outline tables, those are the regular data that gets synced. The blue is the master data, and this gets refreshed locally. Utility, the syslog global, virtual value lists, virtual list, and then these two add-ons, the what's my latency and this IUD spinner from borders. So it's, kind of light because we did not want to, again, because this had to be offline, we couldn't just open up, have a set of layouts in Stella. So we kind of consolidated everything into these tables. Our starting point was our humble service call in Stella. So real simple. So we have a bunch of stuff that comes off of here. You can see we use Anchor Buoy. We have, and a lot of this is not remotely involved in the mobile app. So this is also, we can see things from the service call detail, which you'll see in the next slide. And a lot of things like, to control this drop down or what have you. But a lot of this stuff is coming off of, where is it? This resident table here. So the service and then the related resident. The service call detail is where the people in the tech department, the tech managers, are assigning things. And it's a little busy just because we've been working on it forever and have not redesigned it lately. But the most important things are the type of service call, this service note. So like I said, the service note is the top thing that they see on the iPads or on any of their paperwork. Because this is something where the CSR, like they say here, will be on the front porch in a bag. So that note has to rise to the top for everything. The date, the tech, the scheduler, when it is in the day, the stop number, and then what the status is. This is all the important stuff. So what they had been doing historically is, the tech would come back with their stack of paper and all of their changes on it. And they'd have to hand it to somebody in the tech department, and they'd have to go over all of it, go to the contract and change what equipment is on, has been installed or not, whether or not it was rescheduled, if there was a resolution, enter that in. So there's a lot of back and forth that they have to do. In the list of service calls, they have, so we've got a to be scheduled, a view by technician, and then confirmed calls. In the confirmed calls list, there is a nice little button that will bundle up all of those stops for the iPad for the day. So a set of confirmed stops for a technician on a day is a daily tech report. And then the managers prep the stop order. Then they click that button and it bundles all the stops for a day into the mobile DTR. So the new tables we had to create in Stella to accommodate the mobile sync is we've got the mobile app, which is where the FileMaker file itself, the Stella mobile file, sits for distribution. We've got the DTR, which is that daily tech report. We've got a table for images, a table for an inbox. The inbox is basically what happens is when the images come in, they come in as base 64, and then they get converted to images. And that's why these records, the record count's about the same. The inbox will also, it can also take any other kind of information. We may or may not keep using that. Some of this might change. The messages, no one's been using messages, but at some point, hopefully they will. And then we've got the service call. The mobile service call structure here is pretty easy, pretty simple. Not much going on there. This is our creation workflow. What I said in the last presentation was that I put these in here because I spent time putting them together, and I like showing off little graphics. So again, they create on the main computers, wherever they are, create the DTRs, and then we have a checkout and a check-in. So the checkout, you can see when everything gets downloaded, and then the check-in at the end of the day, you get that time, whether it's that they do it the same day as they did the checkout, or if they do it the following morning, 10 minutes before they download the next one. But then everything gets to the iPads, and I don't think anything in here. I've already said all this stuff, but that's the general idea. The mobile app stores the technician's UID from Stella. There's a technician list, a technician table in Stella. And so when you assign the iPad, it has two fields. It has a tech ID and then a tech nickname. And that's all it needs to talk to the server to get the right daily tech report. So based on the current date, when it asks for DTR, uses the UID to find the records with the data API. So easy peasy. So the checkout process is the iPad connects to the server, downloads the available DTR local, download timestamp logged on the server. The iPad unbundles the DTR data, and then they go on their way, doing their service calls, syncing throughout the day. So when they update to complete or reschedule, it pops up to the server. This notification for a new service call, I am working on that currently. They need to be able to move a service call if they, say, oh, hey, so-and-so, Mark got sick. He can't do his afternoon route, but Matt, he's, he's 20 minutes away. I'll ask him to pick that one up. That they can be able to grab a service call from anybody and move it to someone else. And so even though the daily tech report was created earlier in the day, it can pull down that individual service call and just pop up on the iPad for them. So then at the end of the day, they review, finalize the service call status and any notes. they hit the sync button. The sync button will walk through the list. So like I said earlier, maybe they have 10 service calls and they did most of them, but there were a couple stops where there wasn't a good connection, right? Well, the connection wasn't strong or the connection was non-existent. So they couldn't sync those couple. At the end of the day, anything that's not synced, it loops through, posts those, and then it also grabs any images and posts those up to the server. And so we got our upload timestamp. So this is what our daily tech report list looks like. So for these guys, we have downloaded, posted, the device. Right now, this is just showing the ID, but I don't know if we'll do anything with that down the line. The stop status, this is how they can see as the day goes on, as things are completed. So the green is complete, the red is rescheduled. When they hit this button here, it's going to open up this window that breaks into the stops. And so we get some of the same information as we did on the kind of confirmation list. We get the status, dates that they were uploaded, and that's pretty much it. Upload to server, if connection is available. So these other buttons here, this we'll talk about in a little bit. These buttons open up a report where the tech manager can review the data from the iPad and then decide to process it and push it back into Stella. So one of the things that we knew we wanted to do was use JSON to consolidate the data. We needed an easy way to compare the data additions and the changes after the service call and client data was uploaded to Stella. So that's one of the things that they wanted in their report, is they said, you know, we need to see what's been changed. You know, we need to review, we want to review all the information, but we only care about what changed. So they didn't want to have to go through everything and reread everything. They only wanted to see the differences. So, so what we did was we created 2 fields for each subsection of the data values. The first one is preloaded with the data from Stella, and the other one is empty, and it is waiting for the data edits from the mobile app. So essentially here in the service call table, for each kind of big chunk of data, we have these pairs of fields. So, and we're going to talk about this one, JSON client. So JSON client holds any data related to the customer. So it'll have their name, address, medical conditions, allergies, responder, hospital, doctor, all of the stuff that I mentioned earlier. So we've got JSON client, and that's just chock full of any information. If the person only has, you know, their name and address and no medical conditions, no allergies, you know, they just aren't in there. But anything else, it's just loaded up. The JSON client empty doesn't have anything. How we build the JSON data is we have specific layouts in Stella that have all of the fields that are necessary for this JSON object. And so if you can read this text over here on the right, it just says the layouts used in the JSON bundling script to set information to send for the iPad distribution. If you add fields to this, well, it says here, new field added to the iPad interface or procedures should be added here and placed in the appropriate order and named. So these are kind of basic instructions if we need to add to this. So the first field is start. The last field at the very, very bottom is called end. Anything between the start and end is included in the JSON. And then I'm using get active layout object name for the key and get active field contents for the value. So I'm customizing, everything is very specifically named so that this works out. And that's because on the mobile app, when it displays the client information, I am doing that by using those names. And actually another thing, another one of those things where as I keep working with it, I come up with ways to improve it. And so when at some point we rebuild this thing, I'm going to build in a kind of section header, make this more of a management interface where you can decide what the header information is going to be for that section and pick a sort order or a position order for each of these fields so that it can all be done here instead of, oh, I changed it here, now I have to go change it in the other one. So I am making notes as I go here. So this is the script snippet from building the client JSON. So very simple, go to the related record of the resident using that specific layout, go to that start object and just loop through. Set the client detail JSON using the JSON set element, grab the object name, grab the field contents, and that's it. And, you know, a half second later, that's all done. Okay, so back to the mobile app, how the client data appears in the app. So if you remember this screen over here, you know, these are all of those fields. Now, this is the layout. It's very kind of busy and very kind of stacked down here in the body, right? So we've got our kind of header area here with these buttons, but then starting here where it says provider information, that's all body. So this is using the virtual list technique, right? And I have this big script called load client info VL that builds every line. And like I said, that is very controlled and very much, oh, now we're going to do the section that's the address, and it calls out the fields individually. When I redo this, I will build more management into the JSON object so that it can build itself in like one loop instead of having this giant script that's kind of has it hard coded in there. So this body object has this, you can kind of see underneath the buttons or these little hidden icons here, COL03, you know, COL05. So these are the virtual list fields. And the shading, that blue, like there's a ton of hidden objects on here and a ton of fields just kind of stacked on top of each other. So editing the client data in the app is also a little bit fun. So anytime you tap a row of type data, so data is one of the, you know, pieces of information that's in that virtual list row, it'll load the value into a global field for editing in a new card window. And then the card window will change based on what the type of data it is. So also in that virtual list, you know, record or row, it will say, you know, is it text, is it image, is it a value list, is it checkbox set, is it multi-line? And depending on which one it is, it will go to a different version of that card, right? So it's always using global fields, the var text and, you know, like var text 1, 2, in order to pull the original value. And then we use another global text to grab the what we're changing to. And then when we save, we are going to write to that JSON client edit field, right? We're going to create JSON and it's going to inject it into that field. These buttons that we have here at the bottom of each of these, like revert, the easy thing about revert is that all it does is it wipes out the JSON client edit. If there's a value that has this key, then it just has to wipe it out. You know, cancel just closes this and save writes it to the JSON client edit field. In the responders section, which is this notification list, because responders have a ton of information potentially, you know, they have a relationship, name, first, last, phone 1 type, phone 2 type, phone 3 type, email, that kind of thing, and notes. We are using another, you know, it's another virtual list, and we're using a little tap to expand button to pop those out. We also have the ability to add another responder on the fly. And we also have the way to remove one, which was another one of those things that showed up or was requested after they'd been out in the field. And yeah, I think they were testing it. And then he said, you know, hey, we need to be able to remove these because I showed up and she was like, I don't want those on there. So had to program that when the data comes back to Stella, if it sees that the relationship is now removed, you know, it has to deal with those records appropriately. So at the end of the day, they go to that sync screen and it will send the FileMaker data API, sends updated mobile service call fields and the image data in separate loops. The upload timestamps are logged in Stella. The images are sent as raw base 64 to the inbox table. And then once the image sync loop runs, an inbox processing script is run via the data API. And that sets the image records on the server with decoded base 64. Okay, so once everything's back in Stella, we have the compare report. So so the screen before that had that little like kind of page icon that I said, oh, we'll talk about that later with the report. This is that. So it opens up in two different windows. One with the virtual list, so compare service call report VL, and then another window that has any related images. So you can see that they got a signature here and then the installation photo. So a team member has to review this. Like I said before, virtual list displays the data and only new or changed values are displayed. And for example, if the JSON client edit is not empty, it shows the original and then the edit values per key. So the first chunk of this report is all just, you know, about the stop. And then this service checklist stuff, like we saw on before, whether no answer, they left the message, answered and confirmed. So any of those check boxes, that's logged here. Did they do what they were supposed to? Did they call the service monitoring station? Did they call the office? Client photos refused, etc. And then contract, you know, was it emailed or not? And then the sub-report note that gets grabbed in here. Equipment changes. If there were changes, every field would get broken out here. And then here we can see some of those changes to the JSON object, right? So they started out with a latex allergy and now they have latex, Mobic, and tramadol. And then same thing, doctor name was empty. Now they have the doctor information, where the equipment is, where the key is, etc. So somebody looks at that, they say, yep, looks good. Now we need to move this back into Stella. So before, someone would have to go to this customer's profile, open it up, go to the allergy section, check a bunch of boxes, you know, type in all of this stuff. Now what they can do is there's well, right now this is, the button's gone because this has already been processed. These are my developer fields here, the process bool. But there's a button in this top right corner, whoops, that will process and push the data into Stella. So they click that button and it pushes back to the original fields. The same layouts that are used to build the JSON data are also used to update them because the keys are all the same. So all it does is it says, you know, go to the object name with the key and then change the value to the updated value. So it was just an easy way to bring all of that data back in and reuse that same resource. The app distribution is kind of straightforward. The app is distributed from inside Stella. So I just toss it into a container here. Managers or admins can select multiple technicians. They have to have an email address because it's being sent via email right now. And so what they would do is they would click off the people that they want to distribute to. They hit distribute, And the distribution process works in 2 steps. So Big Stella is going to generate a config file that holds the SMTP information that's in settings in Stella and the selected technician data. So if you see down here in the bottom right, so this is the SMTP information at the top. And then for every tech that's selected, there would be a line here. And so this is their UUID in the technician list. This is the name from the technician list, and this is their email address. So for as many techs that are selected would show up in this config file. Stella will then export the app file with a specific name. So it will export it and it will name it Stella Mobile Dist. So it opens the app locally in that same script. The startup script in Stella Mobile looks at the name of the file. If it is named Stella Mobile Dist, then it looks at the config file and then generates copies of itself with the stored technician ID. And then the app will email each version of the app to the technician email address. So it does all that. It creates these folders as mobile app dist, puts the app in it, puts the config file. For each technician, it'll generate another folder in here so that, because all of those files are called Stella Mobile, so they can't all be in the same place. So it'll create a folder for each tech. It will put the copy of Stella Mobile that goes with that tech into that folder, and then it will email them from that directory. And then at the end, it says, oh, if there were no errors, just deletes everything. And so it wipes off all those folders. So the add-ons and techniques that were used is that's What Is My Latency, which is a free add-on from Productive Computing. Spinner for Borders, which is 12-pound add-on, iudata.com. We used that because we needed to have, I wanted to have something that moved to show progress when they were downloading service calls. And I couldn't, animated GIFs and web viewers, I had so much trouble just trying to use animated GIFs. And it was annoying because it worked fine on the desktop while I was trying to figure things out. And then was squat on the iPad. So, but that was a lifesaver. Virtual list technique, attributed to Bruce Robertson, and the virtual value list. We like to use that a lot. And we get that from GitHub. You can find that. Jeremy Bonte put that on GitHub a while back. So that's it. I want to thank everybody for listening. If you have any questions or comments or anything, or want to reach out anytime, this is my email down here, teresa@profiledevelopers.com. So that's that.
Fantastic job, Teresa.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're I'm not really a presenter, and I'm going, you did a fantastic job. So stop downplaying that, because you did great. One question that just springs to mind, I'm sure there's some others from the audience here. You went down, there are some third-party tools for sync and integration, notably 360 works with SyncDeck and some of those others. What was the premise of you rolling your own?
Well, so using the FileMaker data API, I hadn't done that yet. So, yeah. So I said, I want to use that. And it was super easy. And it was, that was pretty much it. And we haven't used 360 works for anything. We used to use FTP a million years ago, but we haven't used anyone else's, any other sync solutions. We've rolled our own in several occasions, just because, we did it and it worked fine. Right. So yeah, but the FileMaker data API, I've in everything that we've done with it so far, I think it has been super fast, super easy, and I really liked it.
There's something to be said. I mean, first and foremost, the customization and the amount of control you have also is in your hands at that point. Mm-hmm. I also just find it interesting, to some extent, we as the FileMaker community have methodologies, things like payloading, data transfers back and forth in JSON. Number one, it's great that we can do it. Number two, it adds a layer of additional labor and effort because it does have so many payoffs to it, right? It can be much more concise and less latency and traffic over the network and so forth. I like that we can do it. I wish we didn't have to do it as frequently as we do.
Yeah.
I have a question. Clearly this is in production right now that's being used.
Mhm.
Did you have a lot of pushback from the users on changing from their secure paper to insecure kind of tablets and such?
CEOs on your side.
Yeah, the CEO it was his whole push. And so the few times that we heard like the point person, he was like, oh, so-and-so, you know, they're not going to like this. And Zach, CEO, he was like, too bad. He's not allowed to not like it. Yep. He's going to
the kind of enthusiast you need in the company. Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, buying at the top can work wonders in getting an initiative pushed through.
Yeah, and I think they're also they're giving them what they need to work a little faster, you know, and I think that they're not getting a lot of pushback because the product's fitting their process.
Have you run any metrics? Hey, techs are now able to get one additional stop per day, or do you have any sort of kind of post evaluation metrics on anything?
Not yet. Yeah. So, I mean, we're going to be able to do that in the future. And I'm sure that we've got that Zach's the CEO, he's got that in his back pocket as a request at some point. But we have, they went from when I did this presentation the first time, I think they had 3 techs and now they've got 8 techs going out. So they're going to increase exponentially, hopefully.
Yeah, I've got kind of a business rules question. Sorry, I had a remote phone there. First off, you need to start moving some of your to-dos up onto Thomas's behind you because he's clearly got the lighter side of the deal here. Great presentation. When you after the call is completed and the technician uploads that particular call because it's completed or rescheduled, you said someone in the home office reviews every record. I'm curious as to why they do that. It seems like an obvious automation step that you could bypass. Is it an audit issue or a concern or what? So I think from my understanding, they want to make sure that the tech, I think the most important piece is that sub-report note on there, because sometimes they might type a paragraph that they'll say, I tried to do X, but the daughter wouldn't let me, you know. They might have a little bit of a story in there. And the person reviewing wanted to make sure that they could clean anything up that's necessary. So I think it's more that the technician management, like the tech managers, didn't want techs being able to put whatever they want. So like, I don't know if it's because they didn't at the time, and I'm going back to when we were planning this out, if they were just thinking Chicken Little, like, oh, what's going to go wrong? Something's going to go wrong. Someone's going to put in some garbage information and it's going to be a mistake. They won't catch it. It's going to automatically go into the system and everybody's phone number is going to be wrong. And, you know, so I have a feeling that as time goes by, they're either going to blow past this, or even we can automate that even more to say, oh, this information all looks good, but this one might be questionable. You know, like this phone number is not formatted right. We can totally tell them that. So right now, they're just doing the same as their paper process. They were reviewing everything and then hitting the button. So. Okay. Yeah. And I can imagine when a call is done, when the technician leaves the house, that probably doesn't always mean it's done. It just means they've left the house. And
right.
That's where. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you're muted, David.
Sorry. We've done a time tracking piece last year with a large group of individuals, and we based on input from, there's probably 100 plus people out in the field that were working in a construction type of realm, and we did some GPS position tracking of where the person was doing the entry, and ironically found, we're in Southern California, we found that several people were doing their data entry in Tijuana, on boats between Los Angeles and Catalina Island, and various other things. So it actually unlocked some interesting bit of sort of worker fraud that was going on, and it really helped the organization kind of get their troops in order a bit. Obviously, with a smaller group like yours, you don't have probably as much widespread issues like that.
Right. I hope not.
Do we have any other questions for Teresa?
Surprised everybody's still awake. You guys go long.
No, it's been a while since we've had some hardcore FileMaker stuff in the meetings, so
Okay.
we're actually very interested. It's wonderful to see that you put all those pieces together, and I wonder how that, you know, the testing that you must have done for the place where you generate all the technician files and distribute them and everything. That must have taken a lot of testing and trying to get this together. So there's a lot of appreciation, I think, in the group for all the effort that took.
Yeah, thank you.
What was the total start to, hey, here's the inception to deployed the first version of this? How long was that period, Teresa?
In terms of like months of building?
Yeah.
There was like a 6-month gap between when we, there was a chunk where we had done the wireframes, and when we were done with the wireframes, there were several months where they sat on those before we could even, they're very busy. They have a lot of stuff going on. And so, but I can't remember, I'm thinking it was 2020-ish when we started, or even before when we started the wireframes. Yeah. Because they were thinking about this forever.
But a year of development?
Yeah, probably a year of development. Sounds about right.
Yeah. Well, if nobody else has any other questions, anyone?
I don't have a question. I just have a quick comment for anyone who's curious. It sounds very aristocratic to say Bante, but the actual pronunciation is Banty.
Okay.
And I only know that because it was my last name for 7 years. So, for anyone who's curious.
There's good FileMaker genetics in that family.
Thank you. Anyway, I love the presentation. It was very interesting. Thank you.